On May the 24th, 1992, a grieving man arrived at a quiet cemetery to place flowers on his father's grave. But something disturbing caught his eye.
He looks off in the distance and he sees this man that appears to be assaulting this woman. And so he realized something was really wrong.
The man rushed out of the cemetery to find help. After a police chase, the assailant was caught and the woman was rescued from the back of his car.
She was near death because she was being asphyxiated by some sort of device around her neck.
The attacker was 38-year-old Leslie Allen Williams, and police soon discovered that this wasn't his first abduction. After finding evidence in his home linking him to 4 missing teenage girls, Williams confessed to their murders.
I think Williams confessing was for his own benefit and absolutely nobody else's benefit whatsoever.
When we interviewed him, he expressed no emotion. It was like he was ordering a cup of coffee.
Left with nowhere to run, Leslie Allen Williams had been unmasked as one of the world's most evil killers. In July 1992 at Oakland County Circuit Court in Michigan, Leslie Allen Williams pleaded guilty to the murders of 18-year-old Cami Villanueva, 16-year-old Michelle Urban, and her 14-year-old sister Melissa, and 15-year-old Cynthia Jones. The serial killer even led police to the sites where he'd buried their bodies.
There can be no doubt that Leslie Allen Williams was a truly evil man. He took the life of 4 young high school students who had their whole lives in front of them. It was an act of grotesque depravity.
The really sad thing about this case is each one of these 4 teenage girls he killed, he told them that he would let them go. He told them that if they just did what he said, they'd be okay. He'd release them. And I think that makes it way worse.
The families and the jury were horrified to learn that Williams had previously been let out of prison early for good behavior.
Leslie Allen Williams had been a career criminal and was released many times by our parole boards. And it was shortly after his release that the first of the 4 girls that he kidnapped and killed disappeared.
There was a great deal of criticism publicly, especially in the media. There were people at the time of the Williams case who began campaigning for a reform of Michigan's parole system.
If Williams had not been caught in May of 1992, he would not have stopped. There would have been other people kidnapped, violated, and killed.
This killer's story begins in the Midwest. Leslie Allen Williams was born on Independence Day, July the 4th, 1953, and he grew up in Detroit, Michigan.
His mother had been married before, and she had 2 daughters. But then she married Leslie's father, and they had 3 boys together. But neither were exactly perfect parents.
He grew up in his earliest years in a suburb of Detroit called Garden City, and his mom was known to work prostitution in the home. His dad was sexually abusing Leslie's sisters. So it was a troubled upbringing.
When Williams witnessed that sexual violence in his home, the sexual abuse, of his siblings and the sex work of his mum. He probably learned quite early on that relationships are highly transactional and they're not about emotional connection. And that is going to have a significant impact on the way he conducts his own relationships.
After an investigation into the sexual abuse of his stepdaughters, Williams's father was committed to a state hospital for the criminally insane, but not before alerting police to his wife's sex work.
Leslie's mother took some of the family to California in an effort, I think, to escape the reputation that she had in Detroit. She then fell in love, and after she was divorced, she married her third husband. But that too didn't really go well. In the end, she decided that she would divorce the third husband. But then, tragically, on the night before the divorce hearing, her third husband went to visit her and killed her, shot her in the head, before killing himself. She has 2 boys of hers with her, and anything they might have seen as normal has gone out of the window. It's hard to imagine a worse upbringing.
At just 9 years old, Leslie Allen Williams had lost both of his parents.
His mother was murdered, his father was a sex offender, he had no stability, no boundaries in his life at all, and no child should have to tolerate that.
Now, Leslie was without either parent. So at that point, he and a brother of his were brought back to Michigan to live with their grandparents in Milford, which is another Detroit suburb on the west side of Metro Detroit.
As Williams neared adulthood, he turned towards a darker, criminal path.
He was only 17 years old in 1970. He was arrested for breaking and entering in a home. And that began a long criminal career.
Williams' history of offending, it started when he was really young. And the younger it starts, quite often the more longevity it has, the more it's going to carry on.
Between 1970 and 1983, he's literally in and out of prison, in and out of the court. It's just a litany, including burglary, more significantly, sexual assault and attempted kidnapping. He's either being charged, waiting on bail, in prison.
For somebody like Williams, who was relentless in his offending, he may have felt empowered by the system not holding him to account. But also, I think, given his personality traits, I think he already felt quite entitled and empowered to behave the way he did, and probably manipulated and used the system.
In 1983, Williams broke into a woman's home. But what started as a routine burglary quickly took a sinister turn and escalated to attempted kidnap and sexual assault.
He was recognized at that point as being a habitual offender. And so he had a couple different sentences in front of him. For the actual assault, he had a sentence of 5 to 10 years. For being a habitual offender, he had a sentence of 7 to 30 years.
It's the first lengthy sentence he's had, so he's going to be an older, or at least an old man, by the time he gets out of jail.
With Williams behind bars, women in Detroit could finally sleep a little easier. But not for long.
He's an absolutely model prisoner. He has a particularly receptive psychiatrist who says, well, I think, you've made splendid progress and, we want to rehabilitate you. And so writes a very glowing report to the prison authorities about just how well Leslie Williams had done.
In 1990, 37-year-old Williams was released on parole after serving just 6 years of his maximum 30-year sentence.
People were probably manipulated by this idea that because he was polite, that somehow that meant he wasn't dangerous, despite all of the evidence showing that he was a repeat and serial offender. In my opinion, he could have been kept in longer, and he should have been. I don't know why they were so lenient with him, given the nature of his offending.
Despite the severity of his crimes, the parole system was satisfied that Williams was a changed man. The following year, the mysterious disappearance of an 18-year-old woman from her home would spark fear across the community. In the early hours of September the 15th, 1991, in the quiet village of South Lyon, Oakland County, Michigan, 18-year-old Camy Villanueva was home alone, whilst her older sister was out on a date.
Camy Villanueva, she's 18, she's a bright, honor student, cheerful, the whole world in front of her. Quite a shy girl. She wasn't a great party goer, and she lived with her sisters.
Camy's older sister came home and saw that Camy was not home. She went into her room. She saw that things were basically undisturbed.
The bedroom is deserted, but everything that Camy left is all just exactly as it was. In fact, she's astounded. There's her inhaler, solitaire she was playing, purse, denim jacket, which she never went out without. It's as if she's disappeared into thin air.
She wondered, okay, what happened? Where is she? The following day, she reported her missing to police.
There was no signs of any kind of forced entry from, my conversations with the Oakland County Sheriff's Department detectives that worked that part of the case. It was unknown why she was no longer home.
Nobody knew what happened to her. She was a missing person case. They didn't know if she had been killed or if she ran away or what happened.
Just as police were getting to grips with Camy's case, 2 weeks later they received another call from the concerned parents of two teenage girls, 16-year-old Michelle and 14-year-old Melissa Urban.
Melissa and Michelle Urban had a perfectly normal sisters relationship, partly wonderful friendship, partly hating each other. It was a typical sisterly bond.
They lived in a rural area of Michigan near the town of Heartland, which is about an hour northwest of Detroit.
They have nothing particular to worry about, and it's a perfectly ordinary day.
On September the 29th, 1991, after a Sunday dinner with the family, the two girls set off on an evening walk.
The morning after they had gone for their walk, when the father noticed they weren't home, he said, "We need to call the police." A young trooper was sent to make contact with the parents, and it was learned from them that they did not return home the night before.
The police retraced the steps the sisters had taken on their walks and found no trace of them. They also began to interview the local community to find out the background, but nothing led them to what had happened to the sisters.
The information we got in contacting friends and family members was that they did not know anything about it. They had not seen the girls, had not heard from them. They were concerned. They did not understand why the girls would have been gone for so long.
Although these contacts didn't provide an explanation for Michelle and Melissa's disappearance, They did reveal this wasn't the first time the girls had gone missing.
A young trooper did a very good background, finding that they had at one point run away for a weekend before returning home. With any missing person report, we always expect the worst, but because of the past history where the girls had been missing voluntarily, it wasn't until several days later, perhaps a week or two actually, before the concern became greater. They had never been gone this long. They had left behind items that they would not have left behind before.
They were reported as missing, and then the family struggled for months not knowing what happened to those girls.
With no leads and concern mounting for the whereabouts of Michelle and Melissa, police brought in Michigan State profiler David Minzy to help with their investigation.
First thing I did was make sure that I go meet with detectives. I wanted to know the things that weren't in the report, what bothered them, what about that case was troubling them. We focus on the victimology. These are very low-risk victims who now are missing. Something terrible likely happened to them, and to help them develop media releases that will hopefully get the good tips to look more into the background.
A closer look at the Milford area revealed that cases of female missing persons were rather uncommon, highlighting chilling similarities between the Urban sisters and Camy Villanueva.
It must have begun to strike the authorities that the disappearance of 3 high school girls within a period of literally 3 weeks was quite unusual.
They lived in a very rural area, very sparsely populated. Crime was almost non-existent up there.
All of a sudden, we had something pop up here in Oakland County primarily, and in fact, in the Milford area. And I grew up there, so I knew that the area did not have a whole lot of crime, particularly involving missing teenage girls. Something came into this area and likely was connected to all of these victims, and we needed to find out who that was.
Just 1 year before the teenagers went missing from Oakland County, 37-year-old Leslie Allen Williams had been granted early release from prison after serving just 6 years of a maximum 30-year sentence for attempted kidnapping and sexual assault.
He was released very quickly in 1990. He was surprised to be paroled that early.
His first residence was in Wayne County, Michigan. The parole officer that he saw there said that Williams complied with everything that was required of him.
He was checking off the boxes, he was working a job, and then he was providing proof that he was working a job. He was showing them his check stubs. He was reporting in regularly.
He was engaged in counseling. He moved to Oakland County. His parole agent changed. So once again, new eyes looking at him, but he was still complying with the requirements that the parole board had set for him.
His parole officers over the years considered him what they called a model parolee. He seemed to be doing everything that he was expected to do.
He caused no trouble, he attracted no attention. In fact, I think one parole officer said that he was ideal to deal with.
As Williams was settling into a new life, seemingly on the straight and narrow, Oakland County Police were still baffled as to the whereabouts of 18-year-old Camy Villanueva and teenage sisters Michelle and Melissa Urban. But before police could begin to connect the dots, another teenage girl would vanish into thin air. On January the 4th, 1992, 15-year-old schoolgirl Cynthia Jones was hanging out with her 16-year-old boyfriend in his car at Central Park in Milford.
Cindy was an archetypal high school girl. She was an honor student, she was a cheerleader, she was cheerful, she was very much happy with her boyfriend.
They were in the car, and while they were sitting there in the car, this man ran up to them in a ski mask and tells them he has to have the car. Get out of the car, I need the car. He gives them a story that he just robbed a place. And so he forces them out of the car.
You can imagine they were very frightened. And he marches the couple into a nearby wooded area where he proceeds to tie up the boyfriend to one of the trees. The boyfriend tries to escape, but the man with the ski mask ushers Cindy into a wood not far away, and it's the last the boyfriend ever sees of her.
Just minutes later, the boyfriend freed himself from his restraints and called the police. They searched the entire park, but despite their best efforts, they were unable to find any clues to Cynthia's whereabouts, nor the identity of her abductor.
Her boyfriend was not able to identify him because his identity was obscured, but still, at least her boyfriend was able to report this to police, so they knew that Cindy had been abducted.
But the lack of details on the assailant meant the police were struggling to find the teenage couple's attacker.
Predators are really difficult to identify and to capture. And there's quite a few reasons for that. The biggest one, obviously, being that they rarely have any relationship to the person that they've assaulted. Nothing that links them in any way. Police have to start from a position of, there's 30,000 people that live in this area, it could be any one of them. They have to go on other motivations, forms of evidence, identifying suspects.
As a result, police had to consider one potential suspect.
Because of the odd circumstances, the boyfriend, he was thought to be a suspect for the longest time.
Was he trying to cover up the fact that she'd run away? Was he trying to cover up, even worse, that he'd killed her and hidden her body?
Police could find absolutely no evidence to suggest Cynthia's boyfriend was involved in her disappearance, and he was officially ruled out as a suspect 6 days later.
The 16-year-old boyfriend was traumatized by this experience. How could he not have been? He's watched the girl he was fallen in love with being escorted away by a masked man. He's left tied to a tree, and then he's suspected of Cindy's abduction. It is something that would be very, very difficult to recover from.
With their only suspect eliminated from the inquiry, police were no closer to finding Cynthia's true kidnapper.
4 missing girls that turn up in the span of a few months from September 1991 to January 1992, and you have 3 different police departments that are investigating their disappearance.
There were cross-jurisdictional boundaries where the communication wasn't always there. This was at a time before there were yellow alerts, which in the United States and in Michigan, when there are missing juveniles, there are alerts sent out over cell phones telling people, watch for these people, they're missing, they may be endangered. But there was no indication at that time that they were connected.
The luck of the police would soon change. Over 4 months later, on May the 24th, 1992, Oakland County's deputy sheriff was taking a traffic accident report in Springfield Township when a panicked man approached and told him about an attack that was happening in a nearby cemetery.
He's there to visit his dad's grave. He pulls up in his car, and there's another vehicle sitting there in the way, blocking his path. And one of the doors of the car is open, but the car is empty. He looks off in the distance, and he sees this man that appears to be assaulting this woman. And meanwhile, this man looks over and sees this guy notice him. And that's when he says, "Leave us alone, we're just having sex." This witness was knowing that was not the case. They were both fully clothed for one thing, and this did not appear to be a sexual situation. This seemed to be a violent assault.
The woman is clearly being attacked, and the passerby goes and finds a traffic policeman who's not far away. The policeman comes back.
He was speeding out of the cemetery as the cop was coming in, and the cop realized, okay, that's the guy, and chased him. And this started a little bit of a harrowing car chase that was also a foot chase, because at one point, this man wrecked his car and got out on foot and tried to get away.
After an intense chase, police were able to capture their assailant, and they were shocked to learn that this wasn't their suspect's first time in handcuffs. He revealed himself as 38-year-old seasoned criminal Leslie Allen Williams.
Williams is slightly shamefaced, but nevertheless is arrested on suspicion of the attack on the woman in the cemetery, but then announces to the officer that actually the woman he was attacking is in the boot of his car and she won't be able to breathe for very long as she's in there.
She was near death, I believe, because she was being asphyxiated by some sort of device around her neck.
Williams had placed her in the trunk, reportedly with one of his plastic ties that he liked to use around her neck. And so the police officer was able to get into the trunk and get to her right before anything terrible happened and rescue her.
The police officer reached the woman just in time, and she was quickly transported to hospital, where she made a full recovery. With the victim safe, the focus shifted to questioning her attacker.
Williams was arrested, taken into police custody, and as they were talking to him, he really wasn't giving much up.
Because of looking at his criminal history and past, that further investigation was done. There was a search warrant that was executed at his home.
They found plastic zip ties. They found the shovel in his car too, so they knew there was something more to this guy than just trying to attack somebody in a cemetery. And when they searched his house, they found a ring.
That ring belonged to none other than the missing 18-year-old Camy Villanueva. Suspecting Williams may be involved in Camy's disappearance, they made contact with his ex-girlfriend to find out more about the man they had in custody. And what she had to say filled them with dread.
She told police how she had, during their relationship, given Williams a kitten to take care of. And Williams told her later that he killed the kitten. For whatever reason, who knows? But he also buried the kitten, and so police were very interested.
Williams's ex-girlfriend gave police the location of the burial site, and on a hunch that Williams might have revisited a place he already knew, they headed straight for it.
They started digging, and they realized that they were about to discover Camy Villanueva.
Once presented with the overwhelming evidence, Williams had no choice but to confess to Camy's murder. And what he revealed next added a disturbing twist.
When he was on parole from prison in 1990, he worked in a gas station. And another girl who worked in the gas station had a sister called Camy Villanueva.
Williams would actually see Camy coming to the gas station where he worked. He was aware of where they lived and what their habits were.
Absolutely Williams's cup of tea. And so when he gets out of jail, one of the first people he targets is Cary Villanueva.
Camy was home alone. She was in her bedroom. She was sitting there playing solitaire with a deck of cards.
Williams told investigators that after donning a ski mask in a bid to disguise himself, he approached the home of Camy Villanueva armed with a pocket knife.
He realized that her door was unlocked. He came inside. He abducted her. He forced her into his car. He took her to another location.
Williams takes her to a cemetery not very far away, where he proceeds to rape her and to kill her.
His method was strangulation, which is very common among killers because it's up close and personal. You get an opportunity to, interact with your victim and control their life. That's the ultimate exercise of power. And I think that that's what he did.
He actually dug a shallow grave in a field and buried her, only to revisit her months later.
There were reports that Williams had dug up and had sex with the body. So there's some kind of necrophilia going on here.
That is not unheard of with killers. They will, if they can, revisit a body again to get that emotional moment, relive it, maybe re-assault the victim.
How could somebody come back and the smell is terrible and the condition of the body is bad? How could they do that? But we're talking about people who are wired differently. That going back allows him to relive that whole event over and over again.
Leslie Allen Williams had confessed to the murder of Camy Villanueva, and he hadn't finished yet. As he continued to talk, the 38-year-old would reveal even more disturbing information that would leave detectives horrified. On the evening of May the 27th, 1992, in the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, 38-year-old Leslie Allen Williams had confessed to raping and killing 18-year-old Camy Villanueva 8 months earlier. What began as a single admission soon snowballed into a cascade of confessions.
When Williams was interviewed by the sheriff's deputies and began telling about Camy, he also admitted to the kidnapping and murder of the Urban sisters.
The two teenage sisters, 16-year-old Michelle and 14-year-old Melissa Urban, had gone missing on September the 29th, 1991, after going out for a walk. It had been a cold case for 8 months, until now.
At that point, the state police in Brighton was contacted. Our detective bureau was activated. We're able to take Williams into our custody and interview him.
Williams admitted he'd been watching the Urban sisters for several days.
The reason he was up in that area, stalking people, was because he was court-ordered to see a psychotherapist who was just miles away from where the Urban sisters lived.
They went out for a walk near their home in that remote area, and Williams realized this. He saw them, and he hid in some bushes, and he waited for them to come up on him, and he jumped out.
And with a small pocket knife, he threatened the girls, grabbing one of them. The other girl submitted to his demands, fearing for her sister.
And what's more, had gone to the lengths of taking photographs of them, which he'd kept as souvenirs, which again the police found in their search of his house.
Taking a trophy really is about a conquest. You hear the term souvenir and trophy. A souvenir just means that we were at some place. A trophy means that we won, we conquered something. And so taking those things allows him to relive those events over and over again.
He first tried to completely incapacitate them with starter fluid, much like an ether, to put them to sleep, and suffocated them.
After killing the two girls, Williams told detectives that he drove 4 miles to the outskirts of Fenton, Michigan, where he callously buried the teenage sisters, once again digging a shallow grave in a nearby cemetery.
He covered the Urban sisters with blankets, and that quite possibly was to protect the bodies from the earth and everything around them, to perhaps keep them in a better state for a longer time. He didn't bury them deep enough that he couldn't get access to them.
Williams also revealed his cruel final words to the terrified young sisters.
He told them that he would let them go. He told them that if they just did what he said, they'd be okay. He'd release them. And I think that makes it way worse.
In police custody, Williams had confessed to 3 murders, but he didn't stop there. Detectives were about to discover one final victim. 15-year-old schoolgirl Cynthia Jones, who was abducted whilst on a date with her boyfriend in Central Park in Milford.
He took Cindy in his car, and like with the other victims, he raped her. He did change his MO a little bit, though. He had strangled Cami Villanueva. He had suffocated the 2 girls. But then with Cynthia Jones, he actually stabbed her in the chest with his knife and buried her in a shallow grave.
Now, there could be many reasons for that. It could be that she got out of his control. It could be that he needed to do it very quickly and efficiently, and to strangle someone takes longer, potentially, than stabbing someone.
After confessing to the murders of the 4 teenagers, Williams made one final deal with police.
When they were able to obtain confessions from Williams, he agreed to take them to where the 3 other girls were buried. So that was up to the cemetery in Fenton where the Urban girls were buried, and then that was to the other part of Buno Road where Cindy Jones was buried.
I think Williams confessing was for his own benefit and absolutely nobody else's benefit whatsoever. If he says, look, I can help you find more bodies and see what a great guy I am and see how sincere I am, because this might help with him making arguments that he wants to change or that he feels remorse or guilt or shame.
With an overwhelming amount of evidence in front of him, including photographs of the Urban sisters, Cami Villanueva's ring, and the bodies, Williams decided to plead guilty to all 4 murders at the Oakland County Court on June the 3rd, 1992.
He said something to the effect that he just wanted to save the taxpayers the expense and save everybody the grief, save the victim family members the grief of going through a trial. So it was pretty quick that he was sentenced. He was arrested in May 1992, and he was sentenced to everything in July 1992 without a trial.
In Michigan, the punishment for first-degree murder, capital murder, is mandatory life in prison without parole. Kidnapping in Michigan also carries a life sentence.
On July the 7th, 1992, Williams was sentenced to life without parole for the murder of Cynthia Jones. Later that day, he was given 4 consecutive life terms for kidnapping, attempted murder, and the attempted rape of the woman at the Springfield Township Cemetery. Williams was also sentenced to life for Cammie's murder on September the 24th and for the Urban sisters' murder on October the 5th.
Cindy's mother was horrified by the fact that her daughter had been killed by a man who'd been let out of prison when he shouldn't have been. Unfortunately, it's a plea we hear so often from the victims of crime, particularly violent murder.
I think Leslie Allen Williams represents a failure of the entire criminal justice system, particularly the parole system. Leslie Allen Williams never should have been on the street. And there's 4 young ladies that are dead because of that.
When he was serving a 30-year sentence back in 1983 for kidnap and sexual assault, Williams's prison psychiatrist wrote in her report that she felt he was making good progress and was eligible for rehabilitation.
The year that Williams was released from prison on parole, there were, I believe, 11,000 people in Michigan that went before the parole board. The parole board released almost 9,000 of those people on parole. Subsequent to Williams' convictions and sentencing, the parents of Michelle and Melissa Urban were instrumental in making changes to the way the parole board in Michigan reviews people and releases people.
There was legislation enacted later in 1992, as I understand, to reform Michigan's parole system. So I guess you could say that that's something that hopefully is good that has come out of the case.
And it wasn't just the families that were impacted by these tragic killings.
I'll tell you, people who work on a serial killer case never want to do that again. It is so physically and emotionally draining that, it affects their family life because they're spending more time on the case. There's a lot of pressure from the media, from the public, from, your boss to solve these cases. And while you do feel good that we caught the guy, it's something that they really don't want to have to go through again.
My department, the Michigan State Police, have counselors and psychologists on staff because they know of the toll that investigations can have. I personally feel there is no such thing as justice in a case like this. The girls will never be brought back. The only thing we have is the knowledge that Williams will never be able to do this again, and so that the other young women out there will be safe.
The decision to release Leslie Allen Williams early proved to be catastrophic. He was a dangerous, seasoned criminal whose frequent appearances in and out of prison didn't deter him from taking the lives of Cammie Villanueva, sisters Michelle and Melissa Urban, and 15-year-old Cynthia Jones in the space of just 9 months. This undoubtedly makes Leslie Allen Williams one of the world's most evil killers.